This is your home for the most competitive football in the state of Michigan. Your home for the most comprehensive coverage week in and week out. This is the Mac Attack with Zach and Zach.
Zach, you know what that is? That is the smell, the feeling of football. Finally.
We've got scores.
Man.
We're going to break it down.
Do we ever? And what a night it was last night, Zach. Certainly things are different, right? We live in a different world. This is a different time. Even the most normal things take on a different shape, a different feel. But I got to tell you, last night, even though I was at home instead of being at one of these games, the ability to watch and follow along, it was pretty cool. I got to say, it's it was like I felt like the MAC last night in high school football around Michigan. I'm sure there were little snags and glitches. We have them down here, you know it.
Sure.
But I got to say, I feel like high school football took a step forward last night because I think these kind of things, the MHSAA created like a waiver this year to allow this kind of thing to happen. Normally, you're not allowed.
Yeah, no live streaming.
I think you can't give this to us like that and then take it away. I don't think it's going to affect attendance. I think at some of those games like last night, Chip Dakota, you get 8, 9, 10,000 people. I don't think if you could watch it and you could go, I think that place still would have been packed. And so I think
if given the option, you're going to go and see it in person. If this is your local high school, if this is Friday Night Lights, you're going to go in person. But for our situation here, especially when we're trying to follow 3 games at the same time, it makes it much easier for us now to see things in real time and be able to watch all 3 games at once instead of only relying on Twitter feeds.
And I got to say, props to the Chippewa Valley crew. That was a professional broadcast. And also shout out to Ryan Armani down at Grosse Pointe South.
Doing the play-by-play.
Well, that's not what he was doing, but it was entertaining. Whatever it was entertaining. So, Zach, we do have scores. You said it. Let's run them down really quickly, then we'll go back and break it down. Game of the week. And this one, Zach, it lived up to its billing. Dakota beats Chippewa Valley 29-20. Stevenson holds off Eisenhower 7-3. Grosse Pointe South over Romeo 24-14. And Zach, you know what that means? Yours truly 3-0 out of the gate.
All right, I'll give credit where credit's due.
One time.
You picked them right.
One time, baby.
I only had 1 of 3 there, but that's okay. It's early on. I'm glad I got the one correct pick there because I wasn't confident in any of my picks because, like we said last week, who knows?
Right.
And there were some surprises here, and there were also some teams that lived up to the expectation.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, there was a lot going on last night, and Zach, I gotta say the between Dakota Chippewa Valley and Romeo and Grosse Pointe South, those games I was watching them both, and at the exact same, I swear, the exact same time, defensive scores to end the game. I mean, at the exact same time, I could not believe it. It was so exciting, and it was great to have football back. Let's go right to the game of the week, Zach. Sure. Again, Dakota over Chippewa Valley. They win the much-coveted Superintendent's Trophy. This snaps a regular season. In fact, Zach, all of the games last night, all of these teams played last year, the results opposite. All 3 of them last year, flipping the script. And in fact, I think for Stevenson, we'll get to it in a second, that was a 4-game losing streak they snapped in a pretty sizable rivalry. Obviously, Dakota had beaten Chippewa Valley last year in the playoffs, but this is a regular season thing. And look, Zach, to me, Dakota showed exactly why they were our preseason number 1, and Chippewa Valley showed why we have questions. This game played out almost not in the way it happened play by play, but in the way it ended up and the reasons it ended up the way it was. This game to me was exactly what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and we both picked Dakota in this game, and Dakota proved itself to be possibly the best team in the red right now, even though it's a shakeup. We don't know how it's all going to play out, but for Chippewa Valley, they hung in there. You know what I mean? So I think you had them at number 4 in the power rankings last week in this preseason predictions. I think this is a team that can get going a little bit here, but they got to figure out their offensive approach because, they were, they used two different quarterbacks, which is
not surprising.
Right.
We thought that was going to happen. And you'll recognize one of them, at least the last name in Schuster, Tommy Schuster, the quarterback on the state championship team. In fact, he had a great freshman season at North Dakota State, one of the premier football programs in the country. They did use two quarterbacks, Zach, and you can tell Chippewa Valley, they really miss Myron Harris, right? They had, when you have a guy.
How could you not?
I mean, whether it's in the locker room, on the field, how couldn't you, right? Absolutely. But when you have that one player that not only is so talented, but that is so reliable, Myron Harris, I mean, it was like the Tasmanian devil. He comes through and you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And you're not going to do anything. You're going to stand there and he's going to run right by you.
He says he's going to do it and he delivers.
Yeah, he shows you how he's going to do it and he does it to you anyway, right?
It's like the Bambino pointing to the left field.
I'm saying, and you mentioned the two quarterbacks and, junior quarterback Ryan Schuster and senior quarterback Jack Donovan, they both threw bomb touchdown passes, each one of them. But here's the thing. Donovan came out of that game and didn't come back in, and you saw him just as they were a quick pan around. He was shoulder pads off in a sling. I don't know what that means, right? I don't know how long term it is, or they decided that was it for the game. I don't know. But if they were trying to work through two quarterbacks, they may be now limited to just the one in junior Ryan Schuster. But I got to say, Maddox Altamirano, the wide receiver, he caught both of those touchdown passes. He is a big play wide receiver, and both of these quarterbacks can stand back and throw the football here. The question is, can they run the football the way they did last year? And I got to say, you talk about running the football, and we talk so much about DeJavian Stepney at Dakota, but like last year, the touchdown machine is not DeJavian Stepney. It's Caden Sloan. He had 3 touchdowns last night on the ground.
That's impressive.
And look, Stepney does his thing defensively. He had a pick 6, 2 interceptions, right? And he had a good game on the ground too, but offensively, the ability to use Sloan and Stepney, I mean, man, it wears you down.
That's a nice threat to have on offense.
It is. And then again, I mean, they had a drive, I think it was in the second half, might have been in the second quarter. I can't. It was in the second or third quarter. They did not throw. They did not throw.
Wow.
And all the way down, touchdown. I mean, you're talking in high school football, if you can control the ball 4, 5, 6 minutes at a time.
Do you remember last season the amount of offense and the points that Chippewa Valley was putting up on a week-by-week basis? They didn't have to.
They had the home run ball.
They didn't have to rely on their defense nearly as much because you were going to have to catch up to those 40, 50 points every week. And to come out and only put up 20 in this season opener, their defense is going to have to be more of a factor moving forward for Chippewa Valley if they're going to retain some dominance in the red, because the only team that we've talked about in the red as the favorite years past has been Chippewa Valley.
Well, I mean, 2-time defending champion. I mean, they went 10-0 in the last 2 seasons. I mean, they won a state championship in that span. Right, and you mentioned the defense, Zach. I'm glad you said that because they are going to have to rely more heavily on the defense because they're not going to be able to lean so heavily on the offense. And
Absolutely.
Going forward, is it more Trey Harris? Is it more Zion Mitchell? I'll say this: they got to make less mistakes. Last night, they had a few penalties, and then on the last series, they had 3, and I think it was in a row, bad snaps where twice Schuster's looking over the sideline, ball comes out. I mean, that kind of stuff cannot happen,
no.
Especially against a team like Dakota, especially when you're behind, especially when you need to score.
And not just a team like Dakota,
I'm not
really
singling out anybody.
Any team in the red at this point. These games are going to be close. I mean, we're seeing it. There's nothing that was it. Most of these games
are
1 or 2 scores. Yeah.
All of these games came down to 1 score. It doesn't reflect 1 score, but at one moment in the fourth quarter, inside of 5 minutes,
anybody's game.
Yes. So Dakota beats Chippewa Valley 29-20. That game at Chippewa Valley. Stevenson at home, Zach, 7-3 over Eisenhower.
This is almost exactly what you predicted.
Because this is exactly what happened last year.
Yes, that we've seen this before from the Eisenhower defense.
They had 3 more points this year than they did last year. They've scored in 8 quarters of opening game play. 3 points.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously Eisenhower's defense is still good. If you hold a team to one score, that's a pretty solid effort.
And a good team.
Yeah, absolutely.
A kid with Jordan Ramsey. I mean, a team with Jordan Ramsey, right? And a team with the returning quarterback in Biagio Madonna. I mean, Stevenson's offense, it's part. I mean, look, Jordan Ramsey is a big play guy. He can do it on both ends. He's a big reason of why they got where they did last year. He wasn't the only one. They had Nick Wingfield, obviously, and among others. But, I mean, Zach, you're absolutely right. 7 points.
You just need you needed one touchdown.
Right.
All you had to do is score one touchdown for Eisenhower, and this is what I was kind of speculating about last week when we were talking about what kind of team are we looking at in Eisenhower here. I said they don't have the luxury of.
I've got it in my notes. I gave you credit.
They don't have the luxury of really figuring out their offense this season. It's not long enough. And this makes me kind of question where they are going to fall in the grand scheme of things, because you start going against those Dakota and Chippewa Valley offenses. Can you hold them to 7 points? It's not, you're asking a lot of your defense.
Yeah.
And offense just needs to step it up. And, we eventually saw that last year, but, it's a different team.
Yeah. We talked about this before we turned the microphone on, Zach. Having Blake Rastig at quarterback last year made the growing process for the offense go more smoothly. The adaptation was able to exponentially increase, and we saw.
He had some great games.
We did, and week by week they got better. And I mean, this is a team that won 2 playoff games last year, right? I mean, we talk about Stevenson and what they did, right? Eisenhower, again, if it was Davison beat Romeo, Eisenhower, and Stevenson.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a slaughter. Right?
They're like, we'll show you who the best team in the red is.
Yeah, it's us. It's us coming down 69 to kick your ass. Right. And that's exactly what happened. God, that was so impressive. Unfortunate for the red, but very impressive to watch. And Zach, here's the thing. The same is true for Stevenson, though. I do think here, because now I'm like, I look at the offense and I go, okay, how much do you miss a guy like Nick Wingfield? Or this is why it's so hard to evaluate Stevenson's offense because of the opening opponent.
Yeah.
I believe in Stevenson's talent. I'm not saying that they won by fluke. Their offense will need to be better going forward as well. And I think it will be. I think the trap is that Eisenhower defense, 9 guys come back. I mean, Anthony Cardamone at middle linebacker. You get a healthy Dalton Dewicki. I mean, that is a good defense. In fact, they probably have the best trio of linebackers in the red. So, I mean, what do you do?
I wonder too, we talked about having all these unanswered questions early on. And after this first week, I still feel like we have unanswered questions because I
bet the coaches feel that way too.
You wonder about how much of this is, did the teams have enough time to prep?
No.
Are they healthy?
No.
Are they, where does everybody fall here in the MAC Red?
Scattered.
It is scattered. And I think it continues to be that way. I think these are probably some of the best matchups we could have seen.
The best.
But I'm leaving myself having the most questions about the Romeo team.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Coming up in the final game to break down.
So before we get to there, Zach, let's just put this one to bed. Look, Stevenson needs to come out next week and show that game for them on the offensive side of things was an affect of playing such a great defense. And I'll tell you what, Zach, you talk about good matchups. How about Stevenson Dakota less than a week from right now? I mean, that will be
like every week is rivalry week here.
Well, I mean, when you only have so many games, right? We're so limited, and that has certainly game of the week potential. And Eisenhower will have Grosse Pointe South, so both of these teams have a chance to further prove themselves. And if you're, I guess, Eisenhower, rebound. Stevenson 7-3. That game at Runkle. Stevenson wins at home. And Zach, the last game you just referenced it. Grosse Pointe South 24-14, way out on the east side. And look, the result itself wasn't surprising, not to me at least.
You called it.
But I didn't have it this way. This is not how I thought it was going to go down. The game was determined. The way that it was surprising. And Romeo really struggled. And, in the early going, I couldn't tell if it was their offense having a hard time finding rhythm, if it was Grosse Pointe South's defense, because, in the first quarter, it was nothing getting going either way for either offense. And then Romeo finally started to get chugging, but then all of a sudden it was like second half wheels fall off. It was 14-0, Romeo's up, and they lose 24-14.
24 unanswered points.
Yeah,
you can't win when that happens.
No, and if you told me, and this isn't an insult or a knock on Will Johnson at all, but if you told me that Grosse Pointe South was going to win 24-14, I'd assume because he had a big game.
Right.
Well, he
kind of quiet.
He was kind of quiet. Romeo stayed away from him. I think they threw the ball 15 times, right? Which for Romeo, it's not a small number.
Right. Well, even considering going up against that defense, it's not a small number.
But the irony is Ty Messner threw a pick, just not to Will Johnson, right?
Believe it or not, Grosse Pointe South has other players.
But that's how that works, though, right? You force. If you know where Will Johnson is and I'm on defense, I know where the ball's not going.
Right.
There.
Yeah.
So now I'm over here. Right.
Absolutely.
So that kind of stuff, and that's the thing. It's these things don't appear on the stat sheet, but those are the kinds of things that having a guy like that, he just automatically makes everybody else better because of the distraction that he provides. Right. I mean,
yeah.
It's like guys that draw the double team in basketball, right? It's not the best reference, but I mean, just the attention, right? You know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily that Grosse Pointe South had a really good game. I think it's just,
ultimately they did. But it's the why. You're getting at the why it happened.
Yeah, I mean, and I think even Romeo's strategy going into it was pretty solid. There's something to be said when you're still throwing it 15 times, but we really knew that they'd have to rely on their running game, Zach. We talked about that. Like, let's see what Brian St. Clair's doing.
Yeah,
and he had 13 carries for 40 yards.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of that.
That's not enough to really make up the difference for completing just shy of half your passes. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing. Not only were they inefficient throwing the football, they didn't get. I talked about Dakota, right, and how Dakota was able to control the tempo. They were able to determine the outcome of the game by imposing their will through the ground game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's so valuable. I mean, this is obvious, right? But the ability, look, this is true in life. If you can control time, you win.
Clock management.
It doesn't matter if we're talking about sports or not. If you can control the way time operates, you win. And clock management at this level especially. And so if you're Romeo, look, maybe the sweatshirt gives it away. I went to college at Arizona, and I covered the program professionally after that. And I was there, out here, this is a dirty word, I was there when Rich Rod was there. And they have this, Rich Rod's offense works great. If it's working, they will ram the ball down your throat. You'll be flat on your back, and you'll wonder what happened. And by the time you're wondering it, Arizona's already trotting out the extra point. The field goal kicking team, they'll miss it, of course, because special teams in Arizona don't mix with Rich Rod. But regardless, when it doesn't work, here's what happens. You go 3 and out in 13 seconds. And all of a sudden, your defense has to go right back out there. And
guess what? They get tired. Believe it or not, they get tired. And
so if your strategy fails in this arena, it will backfire.
And to Romeo's credit, it did work last year a lot of the time. I mean, the
running game was better.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened last night.
And, it seems like maybe a little bit of a breakdown.
Young offensive line.
I mean, you're only as good as your offensive line if you're a running back. Those guys have to create the holes.
Say it again.
They have to. That's where there seems like there's maybe a little something off there, and that's where the lack of experience is showing, and the lack of being able to prepare and play and take those snaps as a team is really making a difference right now. Because if I'm Romeo, this was probably going to be my easiest test in the red. I mean, this is who I wanted to start out. Would I rather go up against Grosse Pointe South or Eisenhower? I'm taking Grosse Pointe South.
Of course. I mean, that was a game Romeo won last year.
Yep.
And for what it's worth, I said Will Johnson was relatively quiet, still had a touchdown catch. And on that drive, he had 2 receptions. But no, Zach, I think you're right. Like, if you're Romeo and you're going to start, look, this is going to suck no matter which way you take it. No matter what angle you take at these 5 games, it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
But I think if this is where you got to start in your Romeo, you say, all right. And so if not saying that they were cocky, but if that's your mentality, now it's going through your head.
Well, I'll tell you what was going through my head. I'm watching. I didn't watch the live stream of this, but I did keep up on Twitter. And when I see the end of the first half scores, 14-0, I'm thinking to myself, all right, maybe we underestimated Romeo a little bit.
I was thinking the same thing.
Maybe this team really can click. And then to see the 24 unanswered points in the second half, something breaks down there. I don't know. We talked about this last year constantly. The teams that finish the games are the teams that were when they were playing 4 quarters. That was your victor.
Romeo was good at that last year.
They were.
That was one of the areas that.
So it seems surprising to see them fall short here.
Yeah.
And we were privileged enough for this first game to have somebody doing stats for the Romeo game. So Bryce here was doing some stats for us, which was great because we have some solid figures that we can put out there.
Yeah, if the rest of you have stats for us,
please send them our way, because if you go to Macomb Daily this morning, you won't find anything about the results
Send
of these
us
games
your
here.
stats.
Because we can look at things like Grosse Pointe South went 1 for 4 or 1 for 7 on third down.
And we can't use them to scheme against you because we don't have a football team. So send us your stats.
Exactly.
Send us your stats.
We're not sharing information with anybody except our listeners here. Romeo, 4 for 9 on third. So from those stats, it looked like usually you're giving that edge to the team that does better on third down, right? I mean, it's all about conversion. It's surprising to see that, but Romeo also had 7 penalties for 60 yards. Those are the little details that really start to kind of play out where you see why some teams are winning and some teams are losing.
Yeah, I mean, and so I end up with, for Romeo, I end up with more questions. It's like an episode of Lost. Like, I go in with 5 questions, I leave with 10 questions.
Yeah, right.
I'm hoping to leave with 2 or 3 questions. So we've gone in the wrong direction. I'm not saying Romeo can't rebound. Look, I said it last time, and I'll say it again. To me, Romeo is the closest thing to a college program as far as operation and mentality in the red. And I think that gives them the best chance to rebound after tough performances.
And now, you're gonna have to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Now, are they going to be able to do it? I don't know, but they have it built within them to be able to overcome this. But the problem is, Zach, that you mentioned it. Like, now you got to go to Chippewa Valley. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't get any easier. And so, I'm not expecting anybody to figure it out in week 1, but to backslide a little bit like that out of the gate and then to have another difficult opponent in front of you again, it makes life difficult. And so that's what Romeo's done. They've made their lives difficult.
Yeah, and, on the show before the season started, we talked to senior quarterback Ty Messner for the Bulldogs. And, this was his debut as varsity quarterback, and he definitely, he had some struggles. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There were 5 turnovers and 5 turnovers total for the Bulldogs. 3 of those coming in the form of interceptions. But when we did talk to him, I saw and I heard the focus. I saw the dedication. So I think this was just maybe one of those first game jitters that hopefully he can bounce back from. And like you said, in a program like Romeo, that's pretty easy to bounce back.
So, Zach, looking quickly ahead to what we have on tap now, football is here to stay, thankfully. Now, again, we'll update. If something were to happen midweek, if something were to change, obviously we'd come through with an update. I want to welcome Utica back into the fold. Their quarantine is over, so hopefully we're able to stay as up and up in the MAC as possible. It's some exciting games. I mean, again, Zach, we start the season right in the middle of the action. Stevenson at Dakota, Romeo at Chippewa Valley, Grosse Pointe South at Eisenhower. Some big games in there for a variety of reasons, and it's nice to have football back, Zach. I just last night it was a lot of fun. I'm hoping to be able to get out to some games this year. Obviously, things are different, but just having it back,
it felt normal.
It did.
It felt normal.
Even if just for a couple hours, it did feel normal. And again, props to everybody behind any of the broadcasts last night because it was fun to watch. I certainly enjoyed it.
Yeah, and if you guys know where we can stream all these games, I know it's changing probably week by week depending on who the home team is.
Yeah, shout us out. Let us know. Send links. We'll share them.
Absolutely. Get it out there because, it's really about making sure, since so few people can actually be in the stands, to make sure that everybody who wants to watch can watch.
Yeah, that's the thing, and we always try, Zach, and we encourage people. Obviously the seating and attendance is more limited, but send us pictures if you're out at games. We always welcome scoring updates, plays, any kind of information. You can always send it to us on Facebook, on Twitter. You can send us an email. Obviously, that's a little more slow in game, but we're always around on game day, and we always appreciate the feedback. And I just I hope everybody else had as much fun as we did last night. And Zach will be back on Wednesday. An updated power rankings, right? For the first time, power rankings with evidence. With information.
Imagine that.
We're not going to have to imagine it. That is the best part. We're back on Wednesday with a week 2 preview. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, 32andmain.com.
Thanks for listening to the Mac Attack with Zach and Zach. For more, visit 32andmain.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Mac Attack Pod. And don't forget to like the Mac Attack with Zach and Zach on Facebook. The Mac Attack is a proud member of the 32 and Main Network.